Hello, and welcome to our webcast for May 4th, 2018.
May the 4th be with you.
Yes.
And also with you. Sorry, had to.
Okay, my name is Christian Debré, and the joker here is Amy Asbook, the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet.
Hello.
That thing, okay? And it is also joining us is Taylor Ayat, our policy analysis and our outreach coordinator.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet is a non-religious organization by and for people with disability like us and our allies like Taylor.
Okay, Taylor has a disability too.
Yes.
Well, like maybe some of you watching.
Yeah,
Okay. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending of life practices that discriminate people with disabilities. Today's topic, new study on euthanasia of people with intellectual disabilities. A very nice subject.
Yeah.
And you will see that the thing is not so nice.
Yeah, I was going to say, not that nice.
No.
Okay, last month, a Dutch study was released discussing the difficulties of applying safeguards to euthanasia requests made by people with intellectual disabilities. The study examined 9 case summaries provided by the Euthanasia Review Committee, known as RTE, from 2012 to 2016. 6 people in the group had intellectual disability and 3 were autistic. And the results were very similar to a study that we featured on our webcast of February 16th of this year. And if you get the printed version of our webcast, you'll have a link to that the video.
The archive of that episode in your email.
Yes, that's it.
It's supposed to be who have difficulty with work.
Yeah, really. The study review of the due care criteria required by law in the Netherlands. The first is the request must be voluntary and well considered. The researchers found that capacity assessments were rushed or cut short. So
Okay.
these are supposed to be the stringent safeguards that protect people.
It's a matter of life or
abuse.
death.
Right.
And they
they're
just take shortcuts.
right. They're taking shortcuts. They're not doing it completely. 8 summaries mentioned capacity assessments, and 5 of these contained only a blanket statement. So one of the cases, they didn't even talk about doing a capacity
They just
assessment.
Step over it, no trouble.
Right.
Doesn't exist.
Right. And five of them had only blanket statements that the person had decision-making capacity rather than applying the Applebaum criteria for capacity to make medical decisions.
And what is the Applebaum?
I'm glad you asked.
Okay, thank you.
The ability to
Not arranged.
the ability to understand information about one's condition, the ability to appreciate how the information applies to one's own situation, the ability to reason with that information, weigh the benefits and drawbacks of treatment options, and make a choice. And finally, the ability to express the choice clearly once made.
Oh, I see. Even for people without disability, sometimes it's difficult to do all those things.
Right. And as Taylor was pointing out during our French broadcast, oftentimes people have pretty unrealistic ideas of what they're doing when they're being euthanized. They say, "Oh, we're going to sleep," or "I'm going to rest," or
resting may mean that you may wake up.
Right.
If you are dead, you're dead. There's no rest at all.
Right.
Or an eternal rest.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and so even people without disabilities have pretty unclear ideas. And one of the things that we noticed in the other study that we talked about in February is that people are pretty good at saying, I want to die, but they're not so good at understanding the circumstances and being able to weigh the positive and negative options that there are available. Okay, so in 3 cases, physicians disagreed or requested a second opinion. One person did not meet all the capacity criteria, but was found to have overall capacity anyway.
She died.
Right, exactly. So, how is it that the person doesn't meet the criteria, but
be dead
and is found to have capacity?
Yeah.
Again, these are supposed to be safeguards that protect people who can't meet the requirements, and yet
somebody just
bend the requirements. People are not going to be kept safe.
Right, exactly.
There's no safe place for handicapped people,
right.
Particularly handicapped people who have
intellectually. Yeah. One physician initially felt unable to assess capacity, and the due care standard has not been met. But later he accepted a psychiatrist's judgment that the person was capable.
And the psychiatrist encountered these people only once.
Right. And remember that what ends up happening is that, what should happen is that as soon as somebody says, no, this person is not capable, it should stop.
Everything.
Right there. Everything should stop. But what ends up happening is if one doctor says no, they go and find somebody else who's going to say yes.
They shop to find somebody who say yes.
Right.
And there is that doctor who are willing to kill people.
Right.
And it's worldwide.
Yeah. Okay, the study's authors found that the RTE reports put a heavy emphasis on the repeated nature of the ASE request, but for people with an intellectual disability, the difficulties with decision-making are more commonly in the area of appreciating the significance of the information or reasoning with the information and weighing up treatment options.
Yeah. I lose my girlfriend. I want to die, 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 I want to die.
Right.
So.
Right, and that's what I was just saying before, that people are a lot better at saying that they want to die than they are at weighing the options, understanding the options, weighing the options. And it's part of the it's part of being, when you're at that level of stress and distress, of course, it's part of what you're feeling that you can't weigh those options.
No.
So the Dutch authorities are setting a lower eligibility standard by not requiring patients to meet the capacity criteria.
Okay, it's supposed to protect them, and they lower.
They say, well, you get a pass. You don't have to meet that criteria.
Let kill you.
Right.
Go away. We doesn't want to spend money over you.
Right.
You're garbage. You bother us. I don't know what.
Right. Mm-hmm. Go. Yeah. Did you want to add anything on that, Taylor?
Another factor that might be getting in the way is if you have a psychiatric condition. Mm-hmm. I know, Amy, you've mentioned depression before. Oh, yeah. If it goes untreated and it affects how you process information, you can't see past this cloud hanging over you.
Yeah, exactly. You can't take in certain information. You can't remember things. Things just look distorted when you have that level of depression.
You see everything in the back, and you doesn't remember the good thing happening to you, and so the scale of what is good, what is bad, is not aligned properly.
Right. Okay, on to the second due care criteria. The person must face unbearable suffering without prospect of improvement. So what the researchers found was that a majority of people had physical symptoms along with psychiatric disabilities and intellectual limitations. The researchers found that difficulty in accepting or coping with changes in circumstances was blamed on the intellectual disability or autism and seen as a valid cause for unbearable suffering.
Yeah, the difficulty to adapt is an unbearable suffering.
Right. And that's, you know, it may be that people with cognitive disabilities have a harder time adapting to new situations. But that doesn't mean you just give up on the person. That means you help them learn skills to adapt, or you help them construct a life that is relatively stable so that they don't have to adapt to a lot of things. You know, but basically what the researchers said is that these people, because they had difficulty adapting, that was considered unbearable suffering.
Unbelievable.
Right. The statement, quote, "cure is no longer possible," unquote, appeared in all 9 case summaries. So that's the clinicians giving up on the person. That's just
even if it's still an option possible.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's the
too much work.
Right.
Go away. I don't want to see you anymore. So if I kill you, you will not come back.
Right. The authors then question whether lifelong conditions should be seen as reason enough to justify assisted suicide and euthanasia and the dangers that presents, which is a reasonable thing to wonder. Is it really appropriate that a lifelong condition represents a reason for assisted suicide and euthanasia? And we don't think so. Right. Okay. The next due care criteria is that the person must be informed of their prospects. Each case file contained a statement that the physician had informed the patient sufficiently about his or her situation. And the case summaries gave no details about whether the information was provided in an accessible manner, or whether the doctors helped the people to understand the information or supported their decision-making process.
Not specialists.
Right.
So they are not aware exactly what is the difficulty to understand for those people.
Right. They don't necessarily know the best way to communicate with somebody with an intellectual disability.
And sometimes they have seen the patient only 2 or 3 times.
Right. And even people without intellectual disabilities, oftentimes a doctor will explain something and say, "Do you understand?" The person says, "Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. But the person has no idea, and the person is intimidated by the doctor and doesn't want to sound stupid by asking questions or saying, "I don't understand." And the doctor's really rushed, hurry, can't take time to answer questions or explain things clearly. So there's a definite lack of communication. And so the question is, are people really being informed of their prospects? Okay, there must be no reasonable alternative to euthanasia. That's one of the due care criteria. Although a number of potential treatments have been tried, they were either, quote, ineffective or not, quote, acceptable to the patient, unquote. Patient refusal or non-compliance was a common reason for physicians running out of treatment options, leading them to agree with the statement
that the situation was hopeless.
The top line or something like that, doesn't matter.
Agree that the situation had become hopeless. I'm sorry.
And even if the patient refused one treatment, sometimes it's just because it was not presented the right way, because those people have intellectual difficulties.
Right. Or, a person might expect a medication to work in 5 days, but it takes 4 weeks for the medication to work. And the person says, "Oh, this isn't working. I don't want to do it anymore."
So you have to explain and be patient and so on and so on. But for a doctor, being patient seems to be very, very difficult.
Right. And it sounds like the doctors their frustration is being taken out on the patients, and that's no good. That's not the idea behind euthanasia.
Yep.
The case summaries showed that there were communication problems, a lack of cooperation, trust and understanding, and even conflict between doctors and patients. One person
conflict.
Yeah.
And they take a good, reasonable decision. Even the doctor is crazy.
Right. One person's doctor felt that euthanasia was inappropriate, but alternative measures were refused. They sought a second professional who agreed that there were no treatment options left.
Yeah.
So even though euthanasia was inappropriate, they couldn't figure out any alternatives. So okay,
kill the guy. You will not have any problem.
Right. So they approved the euthanasia request.
A dead patient never bite you back.
Right. Another person referred to his doctor as an oaf. So it sounds like the doctors don't have expertise in dealing with people with cognitive disabilities.
And when you are called an oaf by a patient, you have problems.
Right, exactly.
It was worse than an oaf. He was an oaf who didn't understand anything.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that tells us that there is a failure of communication and a failure of trust. And how can a doctor properly counsel a person in a matter of life and death when there's no good communication, no trust? That's not doable.
This is murder.
Yeah.
There's no other word.
Right. This is a complete failure of the safeguard. At least one other independent physician must determine whether these 4 criteria have been met. Typically, the consulting doctor would read the person's file and visit the patient once between 5 weeks and 3 days before the euthanasia was carried out. One visit to establish communication, establish trust, learn about the person's situation, and decide if the person is capable and qualified for euthanasia. No, I don't think so.
Something doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it's obvious for us. I don't know why it's not obvious for other people.
Right.
Maybe we have trouble of communication, but I think we speak reasonable English, and in the other way, reasonable French too. Maybe we should speak Spanish. They may understand well.
Right. These are not specialists in working with people with cognitive disabilities or autism, and one visit is not enough to establish trust and effective communication
even for a specialist.
Right, to ensure compliance with the due care criteria. They don't even, most doctors don't even know if somebody can't speak, they don't know what to do. They assume that a family member has to speak for the person rather than providing a communications device or a neutral interpreter or, whatever.
And the family is not always the best way to communicate.
Right. The family often has their own issues.
And they're tired, and maybe it will be better than.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Many of the people in the study were dealing with social isolation. One person was in constant conflict with her loved ones, and the family of a second supported her entrance into a psychiatric hospital. A third person's family was supposed to attend a consultation about her euthanasia, but we don't know whether that they participated. So that's 3 people out of 9. The other 6 did not appear to have family, friends, or partners.
They was completely alone facing that death penalty.
Right.
And the 3 other one was maybe even worse. The one who was carried on to by somebody who was who had the confidence of the people.
Right. The mentor. The mentor, when the person was refused by their regular doctor, took them to the clinic.
Yeah.
Which is, again, doctor shopping.
Which is kind of unbelievable for me.
Right.
But
As soon as there's a negative determination, it should stop, but it doesn't. In one case, a mentor helped the person who was under guardianship to register with the country's end-of-life clinic when her own doctor refused her request. I just said that. The RTE accepted the physician's assessments of patients suffering, prospects, and capacity in all cases, despite the difficulty of applying the due care criteria to people with intellectual disabilities or autism, and the possibility that the usual standards could have the unintended effect of putting vulnerable people at risk. So, you know, the safeguards aren't working. It doesn't work for people with intellectual disabilities, and the tools they're using are not adequate to the job. So the authors also believe that the capacity assessments should only be done by specialists in working with people with intellectual disabilities and autism. See, the authors are, you know, support euthanasia. So they're coming up with alternatives. So make it specialists or people working with autism.
And even the tools the specialists use to assess the capability are not adapted for the real case.
Right, exactly. They're not adapted to the question of euthanasia, and they're not adapted to people with intellectual disabilities.
So they have to modify those tools to make sure that they work, which is not done yet.
Right. And they are and the researchers are unsure whether the available capacity assessment tools are even adequate to the job. Yes, we just said that. They are concerned that bar for intractable suffering is set lower for people with intellectual disability or autism.
Which is discrimination.
Right, exactly. People, non-disabled.
And there might be a problem, excuse me, with putting people with intellectual disabilities and, pardon my phone, and autism into the same study. They're two very different ways that your brain would work, two very different types of accommodations and limitations.
Exactly, exactly. And that kind of tells you a little bit about the perspective of the people who are doing the research, which is that they don't necessarily understand the population they're dealing with. And that the perspective, the idea that they have, by definition, intractable suffering because they have autism or because they have an intellectual disability is really an idea of non-disabled people. They assume that if you have those things, your life is suffering, but that's not true. Okay, the study reveals something that disability advocates have been trying to bring to the public's attention for years. Physicians see major problems in their patients' lives, overlook the social origin of those problems, and wrongly attribute them to a disability, and then offer death as the solution. The cycle of prejudice will only continue to put disabled people's lives in danger. And that's, you know, so this is the second study that we've talked about where the safeguards are not working.
And government of Belgium, Netherlands, and Canada don't do anything against it. And even in few states in the United States of America.
Yeah.
They pass a law and doesn't look what happened with those laws.
Yeah.
That's not good at all.
Yeah.
That's not cars and trucks, and you could do statistics with bumping and shrinking tin, you know.
Yeah.
This is life and death of people.
Yeah. Taylor, is there anything you wanted to add?
Nope, I think we've summed up everything.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so if you want more information on the subjects we discuss, you can visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant not dead yet, all one word. Visit our website at tvndy.ca. You can email us at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow us on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks to Christian for helping out.
Thank you, Amy.
And thanks to Taylor also. We will see you the next time.
Okay, bye everybody.
Bye.
Take care.
See you in a week or two.